smiling when.
It's all good.
It's all good.
It's Friday.
No, I remember how privileged and honored I felt when Jonathan invited me over when I first joined you guys, about 3 years ago, and it was Reconciliation Week, and that was one of the highlights of my life as far as being with the VSB goes, and how powerful that was. Before I continue, I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the shared traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. We thank the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations for allowing us to live, work, and play in their traditional territories. We'd also like to acknowledge the diverse population of people who have come to this country and contribute to its dynamic culture. I know the focus of this day is Aboriginal content and curriculum. A lot of it's the new curriculum that we have. And I was been praying when I feel a little bit lost. Okay, what am I going to say? What am I going to share? How am I going to fit any of my life's components into the system of education in validating it in terms of its importance? And then I remember, just a minute, I'm an Indian. I'm a natural storyteller. We have life's experiences since God created us in the beginning of time to now that we've always drawn on, that has kept us alive and that's taught us lessons that we continue to survive. And then I thought, I know what I'll share. My first trip to Europe. And this, I'm going to share the story because I want you to diminish or do away with any negative stereotypes that would, or preconceived ideas that would have existed before this moment in time. Boy, I sound like Shane Point. Whoa, yay! I've worked a lot with him like this, Shane and I think it's just being amongst the elders is something very special about it. And I, since my childhood, walking around on the days, in the days of the reserve when I was just a little kid, used to take walks with mom and dad every day, hold a tiny little kid holding their hand as they'd walk the village and say hi to every elder and every person on the reserve. So I think it just kind of instills and becomes that natural path. But in 2001, I took my first trip to Europe. That's not too long ago, that's only about 15 years ago. I'd never been outside of BC. I'd never, well, only on day trips to Seattle. I'd never really been outside of BC, I'd never been outside of Canada. I'd never been 7,500 miles away from home. The residential school was about 1,100 miles, you know, not too bad. But to go 7,500 miles to a totally foreign country, my wife then was Hungarian. And this was my, let's take my boyfriend home to meet my parents trip. And I was all excited about it. I'm like, yeah. We planned it 3 months in advance, 2 or 3 months in advance. And I remember being so excited, going to the Vancouver airport, getting on the plane, having my passport for the first time. Imagine not an Indian with needing a passport. Who would have thought? But I remember the excitement of that airplane ride, and I remember sitting on the plane, and it was a 9.5, 10-hour flight. I'm so excited I couldn't sleep, and Vilma fell asleep, and her head had rested in my lap, and I'm sitting there, I'm excited, I'm churning with excitement, energy, and just burning with like, okay, what's this going to be like? What's this going to be like? What are these people going to be like? You know, and thinking about the European as they came over here many years ago, and what the experience here has been since contact in terms of our political history, our educational history, you know, the tragedy of it all. What is it going to be like when I get there? And there's a lot of funny stories in between, but I remember getting off at the airport in Budapest. She was Hungarian, so we went to Hungary. I remember getting off at the airport in Budapest and having to go through customs. And as we were clearing customs, going through the main airport, and I was so excited, I had my digital camera, snap. You know, and this army men were walking around in the airport with full fatigue and rifles, machine guns, and they walk up right up to me. Excuse me, sir, put that away. You're not allowed to take pictures in the airport. I know, I guess terrorist precautions and whatnot. They're thinking, you know, okay, here's a new dude. He doesn't look like us. You know, let's be afraid of him. So anyway, I thought, no, they didn't confiscate my camera. They weren't threatening. They just spoke very strongly. So, sorry, I didn't know. I'm just excited. First trip out of country. First trip, blah, 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 blah. Sorry. Put it away, right? And then I continued into this trip. So we drove another hour and a half to 2 hours to Balaton Almaty, my Vilma's hometown. And I remember one of the first things I noticed was driving through Budapest. Everything's concrete and steel. And the huge monuments, the massiveness of them, and how big, huge, and beautiful they all were, and the intricacy of a lot of the designing on these monuments and the buildings. And another thing that I remember so clearly, looking at those great big square long license plates on the cars, I'm going, they're real, just like in the James Bond movies. That's what I thought. So we continued. It was late at night, probably around 11:30, 12, another hour and a half to 2 hours to drive from Budapest to Balaton Almaty. And I'll never forget coming into this tiny little town of about 8,000 people and going along the streets. And there was one strand of Christmas lights. It was Christmas. It was we were there just December 13th for Christmas. We stayed for 3 months, but there's one strand of lights going down the main street, and we're going through this. I'm looking at the lights. I'm going, well, that here is different than you know the American, my home or Canada, where there's street lights everywhere, Christmas lights everywhere. Well, Christmas over there is incredibly beautiful. But as we went into this trip, no one, my in-laws didn't speak English. My Vilma spoke English because she spoke relatively well. Her brother spoke relatively well. So they were my interpreters, translators. But as I went into this trip and I got to know my in-laws and I was there for a period of time, we began to walk around the smaller towns. We were in Balaton Almaty, and my Hungarian family took me around to meet their friends. And that was all good because we were a family, we were small. It wasn't yet that fearful. But I found that as I started expanding further into the community and I wanted to make human contact, I'd look at the people and they close their, either lower their eyelids and look away, like they were, like it's just what they did because no one spoke English really. And being away from home 7,500 miles for the first time ever in my life in an absolutely foreign land, I just wanted that human contact. And I'd make an attempt to say, well, okay, hi anyway, and I'd keep on walking. But as the days progressed and we went into the larger towns and the larger cities, and I began to realize, I said, oh my God, there are no Indians here. and I should have known that, right? They're not indigenous to that country. So anyway, I'm like, and as I couldn't make that contact with that human contact with people, I began to feel isolated. I began to feel alone. I couldn't, the people were afraid to look me in the eye, and I'm like, hi. And then they wouldn't talk to me because we couldn't communicate. They spoke Hungarian, I spoke English. And that great divide, if you would, began to build. And I felt like there was a wall between me and them as much as I wanted to reach through it. And finally, 3 weeks into this trip, I began to get so homesick. Talk about culture shock. The food's great. I mean, put food in a man's stomach, he's happy. The food was great. I loved it. Everything made from scratch, totally home cooking. But 3 weeks into that of being in the smaller towns and cities, smaller towns and villages, I began to feel this great divide. I began to feel this isolation. And the thing that hurt the most, I'm using the term Indian because that's what they were familiar with. That's how they know us at and here politically correct. It's First Nations. And I began to feel this isolation, this great divide, and I began to feel loss. I noticed the absence of my people. There were none of us in the small villages. There were none of us in the smaller towns. There were none of us in the cities. And it was, as if it wasn't bad enough that I couldn't communicate with people, I couldn't see any of my kind. And I began to feel isolated. I began to feel alone. I began to feel caged. And then my Vilma and her parents began to notice something came over me, that something heavy was upon me. And then I tried to tell her, I said, I don't want to talk about it right now. And then I went back, we went down to our bedroom downstairs, and then I began to talk to her. I said, I feel so alone. I began to cry. I said, if it's not bad enough, I'm 7,500 miles away from home, and this is the first time I've been alone this far away from my family. To make all matters worse, there are none of my kind here. none of my kind. I said, I try to communicate with people. People drop their eyes and look away. And I know it's a cultural thing. I know it's a language thing. And I try to say hi, but they don't even make any attempt. I said, you can't even begin to imagine how that feels. And I began to cry. I said, I know we've got yet another, we committed to the trip for 3 months. This is 3 weeks. I said, but if this continues, I promise you, I'm packing my bags. And somehow I'm going to find my way to Budapest, and I'm going to get back on that plane. I'm heading back to Canada because I'm not going to live through this for 3 months. And then she just said, just give it time. A few more days went by, another week or so, and I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. I sat in the room with her and I just cried and cried and cried. I said, I miss my people so much. I miss my Indian people so much. I miss my beautiful people so much. I miss their smiles. I miss their eye contact. I miss the richness of their being. I miss the richness of our culture. I just miss seeing that people of my color in the streets and saying, hey, bro, how you doing? You know, people hug, Indians hug. We're a hugging nation. We're a handshaking people. We're like, hey, we love you, man. How are you doing? That's how we are. I said, I miss that. I began to weep and to cry. And then I got angry a little bit. I said, you know what? If things do not change, and this is not just an idle threat, I'm going to pack my bag, and I'm taking off, and I'll meet you back in Canada. I said, don't worry about me. I'm an Indian. I'll find my way to Budapest. I'll find my way to that airport. I will get there. And she cried, and she begged, and she pleaded, please don't go. And she said, we're going to Budapest next week. I promise you, you'll find English-speaking people there. You'll find English-speaking people there. You might even find some of your kind. Maybe they're not First Nations as you are First Nations, but they'll be Spanish. They'll be of a similar descent, because a lot of people, Spanish people, come from South America, come and live here, and a lot of them are musicians. And you'll meet more English-speaking people. You'll see some people of your own color. And I said, okay, I'm going to give it that one more chance. One more chance. And so within 7 days, we were in Budapest. We got to Budapest, and I'm all excited riding through this really, really wide freeway, like, I don't know how many lanes, 7, 8 lanes, and, you know, boom, 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 traffic just flying back and forth, and they drive really crazily over there, like 140 kilometers an hour is a normal speed on the freeway. And I'm like, my Vilma's really concerned about me. She's like, are you okay? I go, yeah, I'm fine. If I die, I go to heaven, I know that, so I'm totally good, I'm totally good. So I'm getting into Budapest, and then I began to feel a sadness again. And then I think the first night there, we settled with her cousin. We were resting, and then her cousin came to talk to me that evening, and she knelt beside me, and she said, Vilma's been telling me how troubled you are, how broken-hearted you are, how much you missed your family, and how much you missed your people. She said, I know it's hard, it's culture shock. You don't see any of your kind here. You can't communicate with anyone. People close their eyes or turn away and they walk away from you. It's not you personally. It's because you are different, but and it's a language barrier. She says, I know you pray and you go to church. I said, yes, I pray and I go to church. She said, well, I belong to this Reiki group, and it's kind of like going to church. It's where a bunch of us get together. We sit in a circle and we just meditate. We have a group leader. We meditate. And we try to create this conscious contact with God as we understand Him. But it helps us. And she said, you probably miss going to church, so you want to join us just for a session, and, you know, if you like it, you can keep coming back. If not, you don't have to participate again. I said, you know what? I didn't answer right away. I said, but I said to her, what can be worse than what I've been experiencing and feeling already these past 3 weeks? I said, I'd give it a shot. So the next evening, we drove to an area in downtown Budapest, and it was like a secluded streets in a dark alleyway in this building that they somehow rented. And I remember walking in there and sitting in this circle. Interestingly, before we took that trip, we had a Christmas dinner here at my home in Vancouver, and then we were 1 Hungarian and 17 Indians. My family and them, and here I was the only Indian in every setting. In one particular setting, in general, 1 Indian and 17 Hungarians. Totally flipped around. And I remember sitting in that meeting, and this guy, they were chanting really beautiful chants, almost like First Nations or Indian chants. But you could feel the beauty of those moments. And as I began to sing these songs and chants, the leader would take like the leadership, and then he would begin to speak. And it was like a talking circle. And the people just shared from their hearts where they are at and what they are feeling, what they are experiencing. And for my benefit, Vilma and her cousin interpreted for me. And that's all good, but I'm sitting here, okay, how is this supposed to help me? I'm feeling isolated, alone. I am experiencing such emotional torture, and here I am. It's all Hungarian again. And it'll probably be Hungarian when I get out of here. Anyway, it was my turn, and the leader came to me, and he spoke English. I'm like, yeah, an English speaker. and he sat from his chair, he looked up, but he acknowledged me. He said, would you like to share? Would you like to share? And I looked at him, and I said, I didn't answer right away, because I knew that I knew the pain that I was felt. My heart was already broken, and the tears were already starting to flow, and I didn't want to say yes, because I knew I was going to cry, because I was so alone, so lonely. And he said, don't feel pressure, you don't have to if you don't want to. And then I said, okay, I'll try. And I sat in that chair. All eyes, all Hungarian eyes focused on me. And I tried to talk, but nothing would come out. And then I stood up, sitting in the chair. Vilma here, her cousin here, all the Hungarians in a circle. And I tried to talk, but nothing would come out. And finally, I just stood up and I said, why did I listen to you? Facing my wife, I said, why did I listen to you? Why did I come to this country? Why did I do this? I said, I can't do this. I can't take it. It hurts. I said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go. I can't do this. It hurts too much. And I ran out of that room. I ran out of that hall. I ran down the stairs, and I ran into an alley. And I just stood by the fence, and I just cried like a baby. And I was so tortured, I started punching and kicking the fence like that. Just punching and kicking the fence like that, because I was so hurt. I didn't know what to do. And I cried, and I'm saying, God, why did you bring me here? I know I'm blaming God. Why did you bring me here? And then Vilma finds her way out. She talks with me. She settles me down, and I'm crying. I said, why did I listen to you? Why did I come here? And then her cousin came out. They talked with me. They settled me down. And I attained a calmness again. And her cousin pleaded with me. She said, just give it one more chance. Just give it one more chance. Come back into the circle and just take that step you need to take and talk about what you're feeling inside. She said, I can't promise you this, but I know it'll make you feel better, it'll make a difference. Just give it one more chance. Come back in. Everybody's waiting for you. No one's offended. They understand where you're at. They feel for you. They want you to come back. They're asking you to come back. So I looked at Vilma. I said, one more time. I'm going to join that circle, and I will talk. But if nothing changes for you, I promise you, tomorrow I'm going back. I'm taking off. I'm going back to Canada. I went back into that circle. I sat back down. I just began to bawl like a baby. I just cried and cried and cried and cried. I said, I do not know what I'm doing here. I said, I know it was by invitation by my wife, Vilma, to meet her Hungarian family and to experience a different culture. But I said, I try to communicate with people around here. Their eyelids close, their eyes close, or their eyelids go down and their faces turn. I try to say hi, but they all turn and walk around me or away from me. And there are none of my color here. There are no First Nations or Indian people here. I miss my people. And I began to bawl and cry like a baby. I just cried and cried and cried, and Vilma and her cousin just hugged me, held me. And then everyone in the circle by then was crying. They're like, yeah, thank God for humility. And then I'm sitting in the circle. And then I felt so much better after I expressed what was on my heart. I just cried and I let it all go. And I left those tears in that circle. And that man, the leader, got up to the center of the circle. He motioned me toward him. I got to the center and we just hugged. He just held me and we just cried together. And he said, I want you to know it's going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. And I began to pray. The Spirit came over me. I just began to pray a really powerful prayer, not in English. But it was very powerful, a very powerful moment. The night ended. The next morning, Vilma wakes up early. Her cousin wakes up early, and they're like, hey, Godwin, you want to go to the West End Centre? West End Centre? Yeah, that's Budapest's biggest mall, like your Metrotown in Vancouver. You'd be a lot of people there. There's a food court. There's all kinds of cool stores. There's going to be a lot of English-speaking people there, and you never know. You want to go to the West End Centre? I'm like, sure, why not? Maybe that's what I need. I need a little bit of that familiarity. So we get down to the West End Centre. And we're walking just casually through the mall. Okay, this is going to be okay now. I'm like, okay, this has got to be okay now. I've cried enough tears. It's been 3 weeks, it's almost a month now. I don't want to cry anymore. I want this to turn around. Somehow this has got to turn around. I've got to stay the remaining 2 months. I'm thinking in my heart, I'm walking up and down the hallways with Vilma and her cousin. And all of a sudden, as we're walking through this one open area, we heard this voice, this whisper, "Isn't that an Indian?" Kind of just kept strolling casually, ignored it. Then we heard the voice say a little bit louder, "Isn't that guy an Indian? He looks like an Indian." And Vilma and I stopped, and we turned around. Not even three or 4 feet away from us was this man who totally looked like me, dark skin, longish hair. And I looked at him. I said, "You're an Indian?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm an Indian." I go, "Me too, I'm an Indian." I said, yeah, an Indian. You're an Indian. Yeah, I'm an Indian. Me too. I'm an Indian. I said, "Oh, my, we're glad to see you. I'm so glad to see you." We hugged. And I said, "You can't imagine how crazy this has been for me this last 3 to 4 weeks of this trip." I said, "I've been crying. I've been feeling isolated. I've been feeling alone. And I just want to pack my bags and go home. And if things didn't change, I'm going to leave tomorrow. And I never imagined my wildest dreams an Indian." "You're an Indian." And he goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "Where are you from?" "Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada." I said, "Vancouver, British Columbia, we're practically neighbors. Yeah, Indian." So I was just jumping around and like, yeah. I mean, what are the chances of this happening after such a rigid, torturous time emotionally, and to have something quite miraculous like this happen? One of my own kind from Canada, practically neighbors, and he got there just a week before I did, so he was there a little while longer. So we connected like that, and we became dating friends and buddies for the remainder of his 2 or 3 weeks in Hungary. But that opened the door wide open, and after that, everything became heaven on earth. And the view of the First Nations or the Indian people in Europe is so different than what has been the stereotype and the prejudice of this land since first contact. I promise you, on my mother's grave, over there, I said it very thankfully and humbly, I was worshipped on the ground that I walked on. We're riding on the subway trains in Budapest one night after dinner and going to some event. And you know when you're going through the tunnels of any underground train, the windows become as mirrors. And I had all of these teenage girls or younger ladies sitting on either side of me. My Vilma was sitting across from me. And I was sitting there. And this is after the miracle, and I'm feeling so great and so good. And all of these girls were so excited as if they were seeing a rock star. They're like, I could see them in the window in the reflection. They're like, "Indian, Indian, Indian." They're like, "Ah, Indian, Indian, Indian." I'm like smiling, and Vilma's smiling really hard, and she's like waving. I'm like, "This is cool. This is good. I like this." We get off the train, and there's a mother with her little boy. And the little boy's so excited, pulling at his mother's hand and quote, "Mom, mom, 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 mom," in Hungarian, "Indian, Indian, 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 mom, mom." And she stops, and they both smile so hard, and they're standing there before me as if they're seeing this, I don't know, this, anyway, something beautiful, extraordinarily beautiful. And then she came up to me, and she shook my hand, and the boy was just grinning ear to ear, and eyes lighting as the sun, so happy. And the mother says, "You'll have to forgive my child. He's so happy to meet you." He's just very happy and excited because in a lot of our literature, and Vilma's family verified this, in a lot of our stories here in Eastern Europe and Hungary, the Indians are very compassionate people. They're heroes. They're the lifesavers and the life givers. You guys are heroes in our eyes, and forgive me, but this is my voice excitement. He's heard a lot of these stories about you. And writing again on another night, going home late night after a nightclub event or something, 2 o'clock in the morning. The buses were packed, and with Vilma, myself, and another friend. And I'm just sitting on my seat, minding my own business. And I noticed this elderly lady and this younger Hungarian man just keep on staring at me, keep on eyeing me. And she's got 2 bags of groceries. And I see a lot of bread sticking out of one of the bags and buns. And then he's talking away to Hungarian. He's looking at her, talking away, looking at me, looking at her, looking at me. And then she goes, "Yeah." And then she grabs this bun, this great piece. She grabs this big loaf of bread or whatever it was. And he comes over to me. He goes, "How are you doing, my Indian friend? This is for you." but he said, "I'm so honored to meet you." And everywhere I went in Hungary, the respect, literally, God, I mean this humbly, the worshiping of the ground that I walked on was so unique. I felt like a superstar amongst that nation and amongst those people. And it comes down to a lot of the history of certain writers within Eastern Europe, how the Indian in the story was always portrayed as the hero. And I think when we implement, when we begin to look at the opportunities to implement First Nations curriculum, back to proper terminology, we got to think deeper than just the words that are on the paper and on the line. And an example that I would give of that is we just got through doing the God's Eye project, and that is interpreted as just a magnificent piece of art done with sticks and wool. In my case, feathers and tassels. I like to make it more authentic, but there's a deeper spiritual significance to it. In that, we had one of your students do the research, and there's a really deep. The center of the eye basically resembles the birth of a child, life. And it was created it originated out of Mexico, and it was a time of meditation for the family of coming together. It was used to mark grave sites or homes. It has a lot of deep spiritual significance and meaning to it. It's not just a beautiful symbol. And so I think when we implement curriculum, don't be afraid of it. Ask your local Indian. Ask me. Ask someone else. And there's just so many avenues and branches that we could go. And the richness of bringing this into this school. You remember when we had Alex, the world champion hoop dancer, come in? A parent caught up to me, a non-First Nations parent caught up to me with the following week. And she said, "I just wanted to thank you, Godwin, for bringing Alex Wells, the hoop dancer, into this school." She said, we're not a praying family by any means. We're not even a God-fearing family. We're not even Christians. But when we sat down to dinner that night and we were getting ready to eat, my son said, "Mom, can we take a couple of minutes to pray? I just want to pray for the First Nations people." And she was quite astounded and blown away for that. She said she was even emotional and teary-eyed. And he began to pray, and he said two simple little lines: "Thank you for Alex Wells, the world champion hoop dancer, and how much joy or happiness he brought to our school. And I pray for the First Nations people that you will help them." And I think if we just take the courageous step of breaking all of the stereotypes and not saying, "How are we going to do this?" To just do it. And you got my help. You got the help of others within the district, and it's doable. I was interviewed by a group of 5 grade 12 female students at Tupper. I say female because the content of the interview was quite powerful in that by the time the interview finished, they were all in tears, and they said, "Why don't we learn about this in our classrooms? Why isn't this a part of the texts?" So the hunger is there, the thirst is there, the people want to know, and don't be afraid of doing things wrong, you know. And even if you do, we forgive you. I'll forgive you. And if anybody gives you a hard time, send them to Godwin. No, we'll work together. We'll work together. And I'll just close with this poem. My true identity, hear the song that I sing. Words fail to describe the completeness of who it is I am. A redskin, a savage, such weakened attempts of man. I'm truly much more than is the color of my skin, of honor, of strength, of great humility within. I hear so clearly what others fail to hear, soft raindrops and rustlings, the low pant of the deer, the sounds made by nature and that great eternal being, as he whispers in the wind, his strength I am seeing. And with him on the mountaintop, as a thunder and lightning roll, darkened skies enveloping, cleansing rain for the soul, a magnificent dance, feet lightly pounding the earth, the powerful cry of the eagle, an evolving new birth. The spirits of my ancestors, who do so loudly cry, dancing too at my side and soaring to the sky. Their strength echoes within, of great hope and destiny, of fiery skies, the sun, my true identity. The song fades slowly, but will come again with the dawn. and heart, spirit, and soul, it will live on and on. I'm truly much more than is the color of my skin. Look deeply, you'll see me, and hear the song that I sing.